What up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to walk you through end-to-end how I make a black and white darkroom print in my home darkroom. This isn't going to be some super, specific, very professional setup. This is going to be me kind of having a good time at home in the bathroom. But you can still get pretty good results that way. So go ahead and check out the video. All right, so the first thing you want to do is actually get your negative into the negative holder. And this is going to let you put your negative very nicely into the enlarger, and it's going to keep it nice and flat. So I'm just positioning it roughly right now, but once I get it in the enlarger, I can probably push it around a little bit more just to fine tune the exact location. So that's good for now. So I'm actually switching out the lens here because I've got an 80mm lens on here, which is good for medium format, but not really ideal for 35mm negatives. So I'm putting on a 50mm lens I have here, a Schneider 2.8. And that's just more ideal for the size of the negative. It'll get you a size that you want without having to zoom in or zoom out too much with your enlarger. So as you can see here, I actually have a color enlarger. And the beauty of a color head is that it actually works for black and white just as well as it does for color. It does work differently though when you print black and white as compared to the process that you're used to with a only black and white enlarger. I won't get too much into that, but ultimately a normal black and white enlarger uses filters in order to change contrast. With the color enlarger, you actually change the color dials themselves in order to add or remove contrast. So the next step is actually to start focusing your enlarger and getting the desired size that you want, as well as getting the focus correct on the paper. So I usually do this with a test sheet of paper because if I don't, then the focus theoretically won't be exactly precise. But if I use a test sheet of paper, that'll be the same focus that's required when I actually have a real sheet of paper in here to make a print. All right, so you turn the lights off and you got your safe light on, and it's time to decide on your composition size and actually focus. To get your composition right, you actually want to move the entire enlarger up and down. So I'm going to do that right now by loosening it and bringing it much further down. The closer you get to your paper, the smaller the print will be, and the farther away you get, the bigger the print will be. So I think that's a good size right there. And then now it's time to find the focus. So to do so, you start to move your knobs, and that'll actually move the lens up and down. And you can kind of do it by eye first. Go to where you think your print is in focus. So I think mine is kind of in focus right there. And then now you can actually use the focus finder to see how close you are and to really fine tune it. You want to keep moving this around until you get to where you can see the grain. So there is the grain for me. And basically lower ISO film will have less grain and therefore it's a bit more challenging. Higher ISO film has plenty of grain and that's usually fine. I've had my chemicals in a water bath the entire time, just getting them kind of up in temperature. I don't really fuss about temperature too much, but the point is they'll work as long as they're warm enough, and then they'll cool off as you go on, but that's okay. So I've got my 3 trays, and that's for my 3 baths. Here, we're gonna go in with the depth first. So let's actually open this here, and I'll pour it right in. And this depth is actually quite old, but I find that it lasts a pretty long time. So I'm gonna give it a go, especially now that it's warm, and hopefully that's enough time. In the middle, I've got water and citric acid, aka vinegar, and I don't buy anything special for that. And then here we've got the fix. And this is fix that I've been using to develop film as well. So I like to really get the most out of my chemicals as much as possible. That way I use less and get rid of less and have less waste. All right, so it's time to make a test print. I've removed that test sheet of paper from the easel. I'm gonna go ahead and pull out a fresh sheet from this pack right here. And of course, all of this has to be done under safe light. And for this test print, I'm just gonna have one whole sheet, and I'm gonna section it off using the actual box. That'll allow me to do my kind of time intervals. But I gotta get this out of here first. It's kind of always a pain dealing with paper. Okay, so now we're gonna place our paper into the holder here. You obviously wanna make sure it's facing the right way. So in this case, the emulsion side has to be facing up towards the enlarger. And there you go. I'm being a bit careless with this one in terms of where I touch it because it is a test print. So now what we're going to do is actually use this box as a bit of a mask. So we're going to do 3 different exposures at 3 seconds each and see which one gives me the best result. So I'm going to cover off 2/3 of the sheet and then leave 1/3 exposed, and let's do our first exposure. Okay, that's number 1. Number 2. I'm actually going to hold that down. That's number 2. And then for the third one, expose the entire sheet. So now we're gonna have 3 different exposures, and the 3 will give us 3, 6, and 9 seconds. All right, it's time to develop. All right, so the paper now is gonna go into the developer, and the key here is a good amount of agitation. So I'm gonna keep shaking that tray, and that way the developer gets all over the sheet. We should start to see an image pretty quickly. There we go, starting to see the initial hint of it. And it's coming through quite nicely. Let's see. Usually this process will take probably 45 seconds or so in fresh developer, and developer that's warm enough. If it's warmer, then the recommended time would probably go even faster. If it's not warm enough, it'll take much longer, or it might not even get there at all, depending on the strength. So recommend you pay attention a little bit to that, but again, it's not essential, especially when you're first getting started. All right, so I'm gonna take the sheet out of the developer, give it a little bit of just a quick jiggle up there to get the excess developer off, and then we're going into our stop bath, which again is just water and vinegar. Give that a few seconds, just 5-10 seconds. You don't really need that much. And then now, give that another quick little rinse here, and then we're going into the fixer. And same process here, so it'll be in the fixer for probably 2 minutes or something like that. All right, now it's time to wash your print. So you're gonna put it under running water, and you're going to give it a nice thorough rinse in here. So you wanna move it around, both sides, get plenty of water. If you've got a water bath, that's obviously better. But if you don't have a water bath, like probably most of you don't at home, then running it under the sink is good enough. And I'm using the RC paper, which is not very porous at all. And that's good because it means you can really wash this pretty easily. You don't have to let it soak for a very long time, the way you would something like fiber paper, for example. So just a good thorough wash here is sufficient. All right, and the last thing you want to do is obviously hang your print to dry. You can do this in a lot of different ways, but I usually use this glass right here, lay my print flat, give it a quick squeegee to get the excess water off, and let it hang there for a bit. So I'm not gonna go too wild with this print right here, because again, this is just for demo purposes only, but just gonna analyze this test print real quick. So we've got 1, 2, 3. This is the exposed part that was exposed for the longest. This is the middle exposure, and this is the shortest exposure. So 3, 6, 9. I think I like somewhere between the 6 and the 9 the most, although you can see her skin is blown out in the 6, but there's good detail here. So I think what I'm gonna do is kind of lean more this way, but maybe not do the full 9. Let's say do 8. As you can see, her skin has a lot more detail in that little chunk right there. So we'll lean closer to this for the overall exposure. And then the only thing I think I need to do is I need to burn the sky. As you see, there's no detail up here at all in any of 3 exposures. So I would say this part of the picture probably has to be exposed for double the amount of everything else. You know, again, these are very rough numbers, but I think what I'm gonna do is do my final print as a full 8-second exposure for the entire print. And then I'm gonna block this section of the print and let more light hit this for another, let's say 8 to 10 seconds. I don't think you can go too hard here given that this is the sky. So typically you gotta go more and more and more. And I don't know how much detail is in this negative up here, to be honest with you. So I'm not gonna go too wild, but ultimately I'm gonna try to pull back some detail from here, given that there really isn't anything right now. And then that should cut it. Of course, you can go over and over again with these prints. You can really get into it and measure all the times and be super finessed, but it's just not really what I'm into right now. And in general, that's not how I like to print anyways. I like to kind of just eyeball it, get it done, and print a lot more prints as opposed to really spending all my time on just one. So yeah, overall plan is 8 seconds on the whole thing, get her looking decently enough and get some more texture and actual, you know, detail on her skin, and then burn this part of the image and let a lot more light hit it, let's say for another 8 to 10 seconds. All right, so I kind of like how this looks. We achieved a couple things. One is I think we've got a little bit more texture on her actual face in here, but as you can see, this is still very white here. Not ideal, but clearly I've got high contrast look here. So it kind of works. She's very dark. The water around her is very white. There's a lot of texture and information here, which I think is cool. And then the sky, we're just barely getting a little something in here. Honestly, this is to taste. This isn't my taste particularly, but I think it looks cool. So, I'm going to stop here. I think for the purposes of demo, I think we're good to go. But there's a couple things you could do here if you wanted to really pull out detail. First and foremost, I think you want to choose a less contrasty setting because I think that's partially what's really forcing this to go dark and her skin to go white. And then, of course, you can burn the sky a lot more. I think there is actual detail here, but clearly this is the foreground and that's the background. And I metered for here. So this is going to be a little bit blown out, but it is film. So you'd be surprised the information you can pull out of there. But overall, I like this look. I think the reason why is because her lips are dark here. So it really stands out. Her hair is dark, her lips dark, and her jacket is dark. I think all of that really looks cool with the contrast that you have right here. In other situations, especially if her lips weren't dark like that, maybe it wouldn't work altogether. But here, I'm cool with it. So I think I'm okay with this as a final print. It looks interesting, especially in black and white. And, we're going to stop right here. All right, y'all. Hope you enjoyed that video. I definitely enjoyed creating it, and I enjoyed printing as well. These home setups are fantastic because you can just jump into Darkroom whenever you want. And you don't have to deal with having to book anything or pay for anything separately. So I encourage you to get into that if that's what you're interested in, and you definitely won't regret it. All right, y'all. To the next video. I'm out.